Crystallized was bad.
I agree with that.
Oh boy, it's yet another Ninjago YouTuber complaining about Crystallized. You know, it's honestly really funny to think about just how terrible of a season Crystallized truly is. As much as there are bad seasons of Ninjago, Skybound, yes Skybound, Hands of Time,
During the Serpentine Wars, but Ninjago was at peace. Who would they be fighting?
Prime Empire, well, I like Prime Empire, and even Dragon's Rising Season 3, which depending on who you ask, is either bad or just kind of mediocre. I'm personally on the latter, but I think we can all agree that nothing is just as bad as, or even just as fun to tear into, as Crystallized. Crystallized, as bad as it is honestly just a great season for how bad it is to just absolutely dogpile on. This is for a multitude of reasons, being the worst season with the 11-minute format, which was already hurting the series at that point. Tommy Andreasen and some of the producers were absolutely hyping it up to be this massive finale. Apparently Tommy really loved the episode Christopher, by the way. Ian Flynn writing,
To assume dragon form, we have to jump up, kick back, whip around, and spin?
However, despite all of the problems Crystallized has, I think one of the main issues it does have is its villain, or in this case, its villains. Crystallized was supposed to be this Avengers Endgame inspired conclusion with things from Ninjago's history coming together, and I do mean Avengers Endgame inspired. However, with that mindset, you start to run into a couple of problems. Let's set the clock back to when Crystallized first came out. And if you were told that Crystallized was gonna have a gang of returning villains, the list is not very big. Let's think about the biggest Ninjago villains. Garmadon? We haven't seen him since March of the Oni, and it seemed like he was maybe becoming a good guy. He could potentially not be, but perhaps not. Overlord? No, he's dead, and bringing him back would just destroy the continuity of the final battle. They wouldn't do that, now would they? I don't know, I guess the Time Twins were okay, but they're lost in time. They would have to figure out a way to bring them back, but it's possible, I guess? Other lower tier, but still cool villains like Chen and Moro are both dead, and Nanakon is trapped in the teapot of Tyran. I guess they could bring him back if they wanted, but I wouldn't like that. I don't like Nanakon. So after you start thinking about it, you start to realize that there truly isn't much to do here. Surely you wouldn't try to hype up a group of B-tier villains, would you? They kind of just hyped up B-tier villains. Oh! In fact, I feel like the writers even knew that they didn't have much to pick from, because in Crystallized, when the ninja are trying to figure out who the villains are, they obviously don't want to mention the actual villains, you know, make the viewers think, but they keep only bringing up like a few villains and that's it. Bringing up Achronix and Crux as separate villains, like two separate people that you could have separately, when no?
Crux? Achronix?
So for Crystallized, the main villains of the seasons are the Council of the Crystal King, which is not only full of C-tier Ninjago villains, B-tier at most, besides one of course, but if you drop the from the name, it shortens to the word cock, which is absolutely disgusting. I hate chickens! I've already done a few videos on one of these members before, Harumi, which somehow, despite needing her own video, is actually not the biggest elephant in the room in terms of problems with this council, but let's just tread familiar ground here really quick. Harumi was the main component of the council, bringing it all together. The problem with that is that she literally died. Not only that, but she had the best death in the series, coming full circle to the reason why she was evil in the first place. And even though she is just a completely irredeemable character, in her final moments, you felt for her. It was very emotional, tragic, and that was the perfect end to her character. So bringing her back was a disgrace. The only thing this had going for it was using Harumi to bring out Lloyd's Oni form. The scene where she's toying with them was probably the best Crystallized had to offer.
You don't have to go through with it. You can change your mind.
Can I?
Yes, it doesn't have to be like this.
Are you sure? Oh, Lloyd.
But ironically, bringing Harumi back to life didn't really ruin her character that much, not as much as it did to Lloyd. And we're not even talking about it's okay, but even before all that, Lloyd still not only at the very least implies he has feelings for Harumi still, but still believes there's good in her, when Lloyd should have known that everything good about Harumi was fake. It was all part of the act to get closer to Lloyd, and he knows that. That's what Sons of Garmadon was about, and yet Lloyd seemed to forget all that, constantly trying to tell Harumi that this isn't who she is. Harumi even points this out to him point blank.
You tricked me once.
And you'd think you'd learn from it.
Yeah, you would think. That's why It's Okay She's With Us sucks so much, because this wasn't Harumi somehow proving herself to Lloyd that there was a shred of humanity within her. It feels more like the payoff of Lloyd always believing she could be good. Didn't seem to think that way in Hunted. You've had no problem seeing the evil in so many other villains, but the one that broke your heart and laughed in your face about it raised specifically the evil side of your father and even became his daughter just to shun you out so he could be as evil as possible. However, then once Lloyd does meet his dad, he doesn't even give him a chance to be good when it's clear as day that he's trying to be, and then gets all surprised when his dad turns out to be an alright guy. I think what would have made this whole thing just a little bit better is if Lloyd were defensive and thought lowly of both Harumi and Garmadon at the start. Sure, maybe he thinks worse of Garmadon than Harumi, that's fine, but after Garmadon proves himself that he can be a good person, even if as is Oni's side, that's the beginning of the chain reaction that can lead to Lloyd at least questioning whether Harumi could be a good person with some work. And I feel like that's what they tried to do, but just the way it was all executed just from the very beginning is what absolutely ruins the entire thing. And of course, just the words, "It's okay, she's with us," like literally anything else would have been better than those words. Heck, just plain silence would have been like a million times better. Sorry to start this video off so Harumi centric. As I said, I already made a video talking about her, but I still think it was good to air some grievances that actually weren't in that other video, as Harumi is still a big part of why the council doesn't work. And more notably, even after all that, Harumi is still not the biggest problem here, but I'll save that for the end. Of course, the one that I have basically no problem with is Pythor, although the only problem with that is that every time I think of Pythor, all I can think of is that one video.
Why do you even want me? I'm old as frit, I'm marginally stronger than the average person, I can turn invisible, and that's it! I mean, like, that is it!
Not gonna like this.
Bloody who?
The video does, unfortunately, have a point about Pythor being like a whatever villain. Like, I love Pythor, but in universe, he's just a snake. When thinking about a league of ultra powerful villains, Pythor is pretty low on the tier list. He's kind of just a marginally strong person and can turn invisible, and that's basically it. But I mean, come on, it's Pythor. Everyone loves Pythor. Even the Overlord loved Pythor.
Whoever you are, I like you.
If the Overlord were leading the council, of course he would want his old pal Pythor. Wait, and besides, he's even kind of funny.
He will bring devastation and ruin down upon all of... Are you still there? Am I just talking to myself or what? Well, that's just rude.
What Pythor lacks in power, he makes up for just being so quotable and iconic. Of course Pythor can be in the big finale. What do you take me for? Now on the other side of the coin, we have the poser. Aspheera, to a completely lesser degree, I'm also okay with being on the council. She's not nearly as iconic, but I do think she's iconic enough, basically being the headline character of the 11-minute era, unfortunately. And she does have a past with Wu and Garmadon, so she's important to the plot, she's an iconic enough villain to get a place on the council, and she's even had an important role in Crystallized, so bridging that storyline over to the council storyline. I'm cool with it. She even has a funny dynamic with Pythor, with him constantly rage baiting her.
Revenge!
Revenge, revenge.
What?
What?
What did you say?
I don't know. What did I say?
The only problem I kinda have is that it felt like they were gonna set up something with Aspheera and Lloyd, since he kept his word to let her out after helping drain Nia's powers. I kinda felt like that was gonna circle back to a scene where she was gonna have some sort of relation to the ninja, or even just have her help Lloyd in some way to show appreciation for being such a cool guy. But not really. Not a huge complaint, just something that bothered me even when I did initially liked Crystallized, but hey, not a big deal. Not as big of a deal as Vangelis. Vangelis? Really? Out of everyone? Whose favorite Ninjago villain is Vangelis? Put your hands down! Okay, but even if you did like Vangelis, he lost his skull in Master of the Mountain. The skull is what made him cool, more or less.
Talons of Griefbringer. Griefbringer.
Okay, that's getting annoying.
Without the skull, he's just the sorcerer. Except, wait, without the skull, he's not even a sorcerer. He can't even do magic and crystallize. So he's just world-wise, I mean, I guess he's a king? An evil king at that, ooh. And I guess he did provide the Crystal King with the Vengestone they needed, so I guess that provided his place in the council. But at the same time, even Harumi cited it as a failure, even if she did blame the ninja. Shouldn't that have knocked Vangelis off the council? And again, I must reiterate, Vangelis is useless. He's less powerful than Pythor. He's the strength of a man and can't even turn invisible. But once again, fine. Maybe he did just enough for the council and Harumi blames the ninja just enough to let Vangelis get a pass. Sure, fine. It's still dumb, but okay, I can live with it. What the heck is Mechanic doing here? The Mechanic is probably the second worst pick in this entire lineup in terms of lackeys anyway, from both a world building standpoint and a logistical standpoint. He's the Mechanic. He has a metal arm. He can do some things with it. That's it. They try to prop him up by saying he leveled up after the Prime Empire fiasco. Really? He did barely any of the work. If anything, Jay did that by putting the motherboard in the thingy. It was all Unagami that did that, but uh-oh, he's not a bad guy anymore. So I guess we gotta pick the second, third, fourth best option. The ninja immediately rules out Captain Soto, Kilo, and Ultraviolet as small timers, but oh, the Mechanic, that guy is a big shot. But you know what? Hey, despite how lame the Mechanic is, he does more than Vangelis. That's not a joke. What is a joke is our final member of the council on the lackey side, Mr. E, or should I say, Mr. F. Great. Not only did you bring a character to life when her character was finished, but you ruined another one of the greatest scenes of Hunted. Mr. E's death in Hunted was one of the most dreadful scenes from Hunted and set Garmadon up as such a cool villain, using him as a threat and making Harumi actually fear for her life. It was such a cool sequence, especially for how long it was and just how slow it was. Bringing him back, yet again, undermines all that. Also, it ruins the play on words that he had. Have you ever noticed that Mr. E was a pun in Sons of Garmadon? Mr. E? Mystery? Nah, they just changed his name to Mr. F. Okay! Also, whose idea was it to rebuild Mr. E? Was it Harumi? Why? Who even rebuilt him? This is probably the worst lineup of returning villains of, like, anything. This doesn't feel like a celebration of Ninjago's history through a team of Ninjago's greatest villains that they have to overcome. This feels like a desperate attempt to do that, but it feels like they thought of the idea before properly thinking about who all they had to work with. And I want to stress that I'm not hating on these villains. These villains, individually, I had no problem with in their respective seasons when they were on their own. The problem is when you try to overhype them as, we're bringing back the greatest villains in all of Ninjago to meet the ninjas match for the epic conclusion to the show's legacy. That, I feel, lies the problem. I liked Vangelis. He was cool in Master of the Mountain. The Mechanic's sorta lame, but I liked him in Prime Empire.
That would destroy me! Oh, heavens to Betsy! We better not do it then! Just kidding.
It's just when the writers try to make them more than what they are. But there's one more villain that we have yet to talk about. Yes, the Crystal King himself, the one who hosted this whole thing and no doubt has to be the most evil and most iconic villain of the series, the most baddest of the bad Ninjago villains, the no doubt selling point of the entire council, and has a purple color scheme, which is why all of the villains are dark and purple to begin with. It's gonna be the Overlord, isn't it? It's gonna be the Overlord. Ninjago is compared a lot to Star Wars. A few observations of similarities between Ninjago and Star Wars are made a lot of the time. But out of everything you could have possibly taken from Star Wars, you took somehow Palpatine returned? The Overlord was gone. Done. Kapoof. The final battle was the end of his reign of evil. Yes, they did bring him back and reboot it, but that was just a simple virus that gained a physical form. Yeah, it's a little illogical, but it was a necessary evil as a great way of bringing the series back to get butts back in the seats. But then the Overlord returns to his deceased state after Zane sacrifices himself. So not only did you bring him back, completely undermining all of that, but this is even confirmed to not even just be a one-time thing, as Crystallized establishes that the Overlord does come back every once in a while, reawakens after every defeat. Then what was the point of the final battle? Yes, the final battle had little retcons, but there was a clear explanation for all of them. In fairness, that was kind of my justification for it after I first saw this season. The final battle was simply retconned, because both Garmadon and Overlord came back after it. But as we talked about, the Overlord coming back and rebooted sort of made some sense in a way, both inside of the show and outside of the show. Garmadon turned out to not be really related to the final battle after all, so bringing him back didn't totally retcon anything, and besides, he was cool in that season, so who cares? You could look past it. Not only does the Overlord not really have any single excuse for being here, but to be honest, I just don't think he's as cool. First of all, I do not like his new voice. In the first 3 seasons, the Overlord had this really cool, menacing sounding voice, which I felt like was more iconic than this Overlord that just sounds like he smoked 6 cigars.
Where am I? The ninja destroyed all of the power.
I was trying to destroy the ninja, but that would only unleash their powers.
In my Harumi video, someone did point out that apparently the voice actor Scott McNeil apparently strained his voice during the original one, which could be the reason for the change, but not only could I not find any evidence of that, but if that was the case, I can still be mad because the Overlord shouldn't have been brought back in the first place, so the voice wouldn't have to be changed. But really, I didn't view the Overlord as that cool to begin with. The Overlord never really felt like an actual villain to me, just kind of there to kind of one-up Garmadon to make the final battle more exciting, and so that Garmadon wouldn't have to be defeated. I never truly viewed the Overlord as the front antagonist of the show. It was always Garmadon, in a similar vein to, well, going back to Star Wars, Emperor Palpatine. While yes, being a more important villain, especially after the prequels fleshed out his character, was still not the main villain of the franchise. Darth Vader was. And in a similar way of bringing back Palpatine in Rise of the Skywalker, other than just somehow Palpatine return logic, defeating Palpatine at the end of The Last Jedi was all about Darth Vader becoming Anakin Skywalker again, or at least Luke Skywalker's father. So bringing him back was not only pointless, but also completely misses the point of what his death was even about in the first place. The final battle was meant to purge the ultimate evil from Ninjago, to bring it to peace. So bringing him back, but also just flat out canonizing him that he could just come back to life and try to take over the world again, completely misses why the final battle happened, and once again takes away from Lloyd's character. All of this just in a misguided way to try to end the original legacy of Ninjago, when in reality, it just brings it back to it. This is what's wrong with the Council of the Crystal King. At best, it tries to prop up villains nobody cares about, and at worst, it brings back villains that had perfectly met their end, bringing us back to what came before, rather than just celebrating what came before. I'm not against bringing back villains, of course I'm not. Sons of Garmadon did it right with Garmadon, but what's better than a returning antagonist is a not returning antagonist to a series. A great antagonist isn't just a great villain, it represents the opposing force to a story, the ultimate evil, an obstacle to a goal. It's a sign of overcoming adversity. A sign of evolving, a sign of growth, a rough time in life that you beat and won, something to look back on and show you've learned from it, something to motivate you to tackle the next challenge, whether it's harder or easier. Not every single piece of adversity comes back. Some do, but the ones that don't are truly the ones you never want to go back to, the ones that truly changed you and the world around you, wounds that don't hurt you anymore and never will. Bringing back a returning villain just because is the opposition of that. It reopens old wounds that aren't necessary, putting characters through things they've already dealt with, which lessens the impact and doesn't grow the character or the world around them. It devolves them, which just isn't right. A villain dying means so much more than just a jerk dying and meaning you don't have to deal with it anymore. It's about overcoming an obstacle, about killing their ideals, their oppression of you and your world. Learning and growing, which is something that we should all strive to do. and something we should strive to represent in the things we create, and the things we watch, and to think about from day to day. But what do you think about the Council of the Crystal King? Do you think I'm too harsh on them? Was there maybe a villain or two you actually do like on the council and deserve more respect? I don't, because I should love cock! But let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.